Hey, it's Dr. Jan, and I just want to apologize. I haven't posted anything for a while. I've had a lot going on in my personal life, and I've been working on some projects in my professional life, and I'll tell you about that at the end. But just been busy and I'm a little bit frazzled, but I think I'm on the mend. And today I want to talk to you about trauma. um, when you have a lot of things going on in your personal life and there's personal hurt, sometimes that we think about trauma. And one of the things when it comes to workplace bullying, that does cause trauma. Okay. And we don't pay enough attention, in my professional opinion, to workplace trauma. When we talk about trauma, we talk about personal trauma. So if you've had a tragedy in your personal life, you've had a death, you've had a sickness, you've had divorce, or whatever it is, right? Violence, all of those things. We talk about those personal traumas. Those things are important, right? Those personal traumas, imprint on you and develop, make a difference in who you are, right? Those personal traumas we have. But the reality is today, in today's world, we're spending a lot of time at work, and there is workplace trauma. Bullying, causes trauma. And not only does it cause trauma, so you have a bully who's coming in, right? That bully bullies you. That's kind of that primary trauma that causes hurt and pain. And then when your colleagues look down and they don't do anything, that causes additional trauma. And then when HR, your leadership, doesn't do anything, you're re-victimized, and that causes additional trauma. And so we have these worlds of trauma. It's not like it's just personal trauma. There's all different areas that we can have trauma. So there really has, in as a person, like for myself, I've had personal trauma and I've had workplace trauma, right? So there's sort of layers of trauma. And some, depending on the type of trauma, it can imprint on you differently, depending on your support network, and all those things makes a difference in how we can manage and cope with trauma. And one of the things that always has bothered me a little bit about workplace trauma is we don't take it seriously. If you've gone to a therapist, or if you've just gone in for your physical every year, those the medical doctors and mental health professionals are not asking about workplace trauma. In fact, I recently had to have a procedure, and I went into the doctor, of course, before that procedure, and they asked me if I felt safe at home. I feel wonderful at home. I feel perfectly safe at home. But when I was in workplace bullying, I didn't feel safe at work. And so we don't give a rat's about, whether you feel safe at work, right? But we do care about whether you feel safe at home. And the reality is we should care about both of those entities, because workplace violence, okay, workplace bullying is violence. It is a form of violence, and it impacts us, and it influences who we are, and it causes trauma. It can cause you post traumatic stress disorder. And I've known people who've gotten diagnosis on Friday with post traumatic stress disorder, and their therapist or their doctor says, and have a good day on Monday. Right. And so you get the diagnosis, but we still don't take the incidence of violence at work. We don't take it seriously. And so one of the things that I do when my work is, especially working with victims and targets, is helping you reduce the trauma. And I know from personal experience is that who I was as a person in workplace bullying, I increased the trauma because I made myself vulnerable, and I reacted in ways that caused people, it irritated people, and it increased the bullying. Okay. And so that's why when you are in bullying, you have to document. Yes, you can document to report, although remember that 9 times out of 10, reporting bullying increases your trauma. So I reported bullying, then HR started bullying me, and my supervisor started bullying me. So I had this core group of bullies here in my department who were bullying me every day, multiple people, multiple times a day. And then I reported it, and then HR started bullying me, and then my supervisor started bullying me. So then I had additional traumas. Okay. And if I had known then what I know now, is I would not have ever reported it. Not ever. I would have managed it and tried to deal with it on my own, because when I reported it, those things made it worse. Okay. And those are decisions that everybody gets to make. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you that reporting it often makes it worse. And if you can deal with the increase in bullying that it often comes with reporting, then you should do it. Okay. But if you can't, then it's a serious consideration to whether you do it or not. But I want to talk about a couple of ways that you can reduce your trauma. And I think these are just smart things that everybody should be doing, not just people who are being bullied. First off, for if you're being bullied, you need to document for your own purpose, to empower you to see what's actually happening. When are your high risk times? When are you most vulnerable to bullying? And then also, I want you to document and take into consideration how you're responding. Okay. So, for example, again, because it's just extremely frustrating to be a victim of workplace bullying, because nobody takes you seriously. People are gaslighting you all the time, telling you that your reality of what's happening isn't true. And they're lying and they're manipulating people around you. It's just extremely disempowering. If you can envision a balloon, right? You have a balloon, and it just is like that balloon. All the air comes out of that balloon, and it's just, you feel like there's nothing. You have no power. You feel powerless all the time. And it's so frustrating because you know you're right, or you know that you're being bullied, and you know that what they're saying about you isn't true. And nobody believes you. You just feel like you're saying the same things over and over, and nobody believes you. And oftentimes that's what happens. And so it's extremely disempowering. It's extremely frustrated. And coupled with all these things are continuing to happen, and it doesn't make any difference that you're trying to make the workplace better. Everybody just thinks you're the problem. Um, so what you can do is take that documentation and figure out when your high risk times. When are you most likely to be bullied? And if I was to guess, it would be, you'd have several different times when it would happen. Several times. It's not just going to be one, right? So for example, for myself, I was really cyberbullied. Okay. Every time I opened my email, there was, stuff in there that was, people were coming at me, or I was being accused of something, or, people were lying about me, or I was being denied resources, or I wasn't going to get what I needed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And also then in faculty meetings and in meetings. And so those were some high risk times. And so I often did exactly what I should not have done, especially, for example, like in emails. Okay. Is I responded to everything in emails. Okay. One of the strategies that, again, if I had known what I know now, then I would have not responded to many of those emails. I would have just stopped engaging. I would have only engaged when I had to. And when I had to engage, it would have been minimal to the point. Now, I could have saved all those emails and put those in artifacts for later if I needed to make a case against them, but I would not have responded to everything. And I would not have carbon copied and blind copied people who didn't need to be in on the dialogue about what was happening in the department. Okay. Because every time I responded to an email, or I carbon copied someone, or I tried to get like the union's opinion on something, then that increased my vulnerability. And so I would send an email, and then 5 or 10 people would come back and come at me. And so instead of, if I had just stopped responding, because bullies like the response. I mean, they're getting power when I respond. When they throw the hook out and you respond, they're getting power from that. So if I had stopped responding, I would have taken the air out of their tire. The other thing, in faculty meetings too, I often did the same thing. I was like a dog with a bone, right? I wanted the bullying to stop. I needed to have my resources, but I kept getting denied these things. And they broke union contract all the time. I would have just stopped. I would have never brought up the union. I would have just sat in the meetings, nodded my head, and only responded if I needed to respond. Okay. Because as soon as I said something in those meetings, then everybody was coming at me. So in meetings, one of the things you can do is you can be very factual, only the facts. Only the facts, Jan, only the facts. And don't become emotional. Okay, because again, one of the things that a bully wants you to do is to react. Okay, but the thing is I can tell you that it's easy to do because I've been there, but it's very difficult to do. It is an art form to not become emotional when you're being called names and being lied about and everybody's kind of jumping on the bandwagon. Okay, so you have to figure out what are some ways that you can keep a poker face, right? And so here are some things that I did. Okay, I would write down and take notes. Okay, and I would always act like I was listening. Right? You do the head nod. I guess that's one of the nice things about being a social worker is we have some tricks about active listening. I would write down how I would respond. So actually, when they were talking and coming at me, a lot of times I really wasn't paying too much attention to what they were saying. I was picked out the things I knew I would want to respond to, and then in my head I would start going over it. And I would always respond with, I think that's a very great point, kind of a, yay, a little compliment. And then I would say, and I don't agree with this, but you did make a good point here, right? It's kind of a, I used to call it to students the stroke and jab method, right? You give them a nice compliment, then you kind of jab them, and then you give them another compliment, right? So you kind of cushion it. Some people call it the sandwich mechanism, and you got to practice that. Okay, you have to practice that. And the other thing I really recommend in meetings is that you don't become defensive. Okay, because when you become defensive and somebody says, well, Jan, you didn't do X, Y, and Z, and say, I did do X, Y, Z, right? Then again, first off, it doesn't make you look good. That's all I'm going to say. And secondly, then it's an opportunity for people to bully you. So instead of becoming defensive, I call these neutral scripts, and you should have 1,001 of these in your backpack or your toolkit that you can pull out. Oh, I hear what you're saying. Oh, interesting. I'll take that into consideration. Interesting. Right? Just statements like that basically say this. I hear what you're saying. I'm confirming that I heard it, and that's it. Right? So it's very difficult when you're saying kind of neutral stances to come after you. I mean, if you say this to me, I'll take that into consideration. What am I going to say? Now, yes, I could, but then you're just a robot. Keep saying the same thing over and over and over and over, right? And they'll keep poking you, and you just keep saying the same things over and over and over and over. So you have to know your emotional triggers, okay? Because I didn't always keep it together. I'm sure that's a shocker to you. And when I can feel my blood pressure rising, and I know you can too, you can feel your body tense up. You can feel yourself like the fumes coming up to your head. What I would do before the stuff, whatever it is I wanted to say came out of my mouth, I would make an excuse to excuse myself. Okay. Lucky for me, I guess I'm diabetic. And so one of the things that I can say, and I did say many times, is I'm having an insulin reaction and I need to go get some glucose tablets. But if anybody knows anything about me, I always have glucose tablets with me. I never go anywhere without glucose tablets or lifesavers or something that I could eat on if I have an insulin reaction. But that would be one of the things I would say is I would go to my office and I deep breathe and I would just calm myself down, and then I would come back and sit down, and then I would say whatever I had. But you have to be able to get out of situations when you know you're going to lose it. Okay. The other thing is so you have to develop risk reduction strategies for harm reduction. Develop ways when you know you're vulnerable, whether that's in emails, whether that's in meetings, whether even if that is going to get coffee, okay, go find coffee somewhere else or get a coffee pot in your office. Don't go down to the coffee pot when other people are around, right? So minimize your interactions with the bully as much as possible. But one of the things you want to take into consideration is you never want to do anything that's not going to let you perform your job. So meetings were terrible for me. I was required to go to faculty meetings. Okay. So I should not have skipped those because those were part of my job duties. Okay. I didn't have to go to every other meeting because that was not part of my job duty. So know your job duties, know those, and don't do anything that is going to, that requires you not to do your job duties. Okay. So one of the things that I did is I did skip faculty meetings because I just couldn't take it. Okay. In retrospect, I should have gone to the faculty meetings and skipped some other meetings I wasn't required to go. So that was, again, something I did that was not in my best interest. I call again, so you want to develop all kinds of strategies to reduce your risk. Okay. So if you become emotional in meetings, you become defensive, strategies to reduce those, and not just one. There's not a fix it all strategy. Okay. Because one of the things you know about bullies is once you develop a strategy, then they're going to poke you around that strategy. And so if you have a lot of different strategies or tools in your toolkit, you don't always have to use the same thing. So, for example, if somebody is coming at you, one of the things, instead of using a neutral statement, is you can just nod your head, okay? Or you can repeat back what they said. Oh, okay. John, here's what I heard that you said. I heard that you said that you wanted to schedule this at 5 o'clock, but I preferred the time at 1 o'clock. Interesting, right? So you have a lot of different strategies so that you also can switch it up so that you're keeping them on their toes as well. You also need strategies to get out of situations quickly and unnoticeable. One of the things, I'm just going to back up for 2 seconds, that it's nice about the risk reduction strategies is they don't even know that you're doing it, okay? Because, active listening and just nodding your head and saying neutral statements, that just seems like everyday work. Right? They don't know that you're trying to manage what's happening to you by responding in a way that's different. Okay, so it just seems like you're just doing your job, which is exactly what you are. So get escape routes is what I call these escape strategies. These are strategies when you know the bully is around and they might be bullying you, and these are ways that you can get out of situations. And actually, I just said one, okay, which is if meetings get too emotional or too bullying. It's not that they're emotional. Sorry, that was a bad choice of words. But when there's a lot of bullying happening, and frankly, when there is a lot of bullying, your emotions are rising, okay? And you want to get out of that situation for whatever reason. For me, it was I thought I was going to lose. I was going to come unglued. What I did was I said, "Hey, I'm having an insulin reaction." And I just walked away, went to my office. I did some deep breathing. And, I'd even bring back the glucose tabs because they're everywhere in my house. Okay. And I made it seem like what I went away for was exactly what it was. Okay. But you could get up and use the restroom. Okay. One of the things too, if you hear your bully coming down the hallway, get on the phone. Right? People still have phones. Use your cell phone. You can act like you're talking. I've had some amazing conversations with myself is as a way to divert bullying away from me, because if they were coming down the hallway and I could hear them, I knew they wanted to bully me, and I would just pick up my phone and act like I was talking to a student. Okay? And then I would say, "Oh, hey, I see that you're there. When I'm off the phone, I'll be down." And then I would just spend some time talking to myself, getting myself together. And then I would never go into their office. I would stand by the door and talk to them. Okay. And so you have ways that you can get out of difficult situations like that in a way that nobody's going to know. Okay. That doesn't reflect poorly on you. It doesn't mean that you have to utilize those all the time. It's just that when sometimes the bullying gets to be too much and you want to reduce those risks, then you utilize those strategies. And one of the things I think if I had to say, first off, bullying is, I don't know how to describe it, but if you've been bullied, you know that it is just it's like you have no power, like you're not valuable, like you're not worthy at all in the workplace, even though you could be the best worker possible. And it's very disempowering, although that's not a very good word for it. And I think that one of the things that you can do is, because we have a tendency when there's bullying and we're being abused at work, we have a tendency again to give our power to the bully. We kind of let them control how we respond. And we also give our power over to HR and leaders because we want it to stop, which I 100% get, and it should stop. But what I want you to do, instead of giving your power away, is I want you to keep it. And I want you to take back control of your work life and stop thinking about what the bully's doing and think about who you are and what you can do given the crappy situation at work. And by using strategies and risk reduction strategies, is it minimizes the harm. It's not going to stop the bullying, but it does minimize the harm. It does reduce the trauma that you're feeling, and it also empowers you at the same time. Because when you go into a meeting and you know you're going to be bullied, okay, right? There's a lot of times when I went into a meeting, I knew I was going to be bullied. But if I had utilized strategies that helped me control the situation, and I knew that what I was doing was responding in a way that was going to kind of pull the rug out from underneath the bully, would have been very, very empowering. And I think one of the things that we do oftentimes as victims, as targets of workplace bullying, is we're waiting for somebody to fix it and stop it. When in fact, even though I never got out of bullying situations, there were a lot of things that I learned how to do that empowered myself. And I didn't I kind of had my armor going on, right? I put armor and strategies around myself to prepare me every day to go into battle, so to speak. And it was very, very empowering because I took back my power and I took back control of how I was going to respond and what I was going to do. And I just didn't let the bully, I didn't let them get past my armor. Which brings me to my last thing, which is I recently published an ebook called Warriors, Rising Above Workplace Bullying. And what it does is just what we've talked about. It helps you understand workplace bullying better, and also helps you develop a lot of different strategies that you can utilize to reduce the harm and empower yourself back. And it's kind of like going on a journey with me. Is that what we do is I walk you through workplace bullying with a lot of reflection and interactive activities that you can apply as you are to your workplace, right? So we walk through documentation, and then we take you through and you develop a risk reduction plan, a strategic plan. And I'll put the link below for that for you. But one of the things I did want to say is, the difference when we look at trauma, workplace trauma, and personal trauma, and I chose Workplace Warriors, that title, for a reason, is because a lot of times we think of survivors. You've moved forward, you've gotten past some trauma that you dealt with. But the reality is when you're in workplace bullying, you're still there. You have to be a workplace warrior. You have to, because every day that you're going into your workplace when there's abuse, it's like going into a battlefield, and you have to put on your armor. And that's one of the things this ebook is going to help you do, is to put on that armor to better help you reduce the trauma from workplace bullying. So thank you so much. And please drop me a comment below and let me know some strategies that you utilize to help reduce the harm.